There are at least 2 ways you can open up a review about Necrobarista Final Pour. The first method is to use a thematic hook. Death is an omnipresent force as old as time immemorial, and yet there are always unique ways creators find to approach the topic. The second is to use its location. Most visual novel-esque games are set in Japan. It's just the way it goes. Necrobarista, on the other hand, is set in a backstreet cafe in Melbourne, the second most populated city in Australia, of all places. Unfortunately, I'm indecisive and have chosen both, like a terrible, haphazard, and probably bad blend of coffee, to mark Route 59's updated re-release on the Nintendo Switch, Necrobarista Final Pour. Necrobarista Final Pour introduces the very recently deceased Kishan, who enters a cafe with no clear reason as to how he got there. He's greeted by Maddie, the current cafe boss, who gives him important details like, here's a cup of coffee and you're dead. This is the Terminal, formerly run by Maddie's mentor Shay, who you'll see around, and frequently besieged by the robotic creations of 13-year-old tech monster Ashley. The cafe takes both living and dead patrons, but the dead have 24 hours, no more, no less, before they have to pass on, or at least that's the rule. The cafe is in a bit of soul debt from letting too many patrons stay over that 24-hour limit. It's gotten to the point where the Council of the Dead have sent over an enforcer, Ned Kelly, to make sure they pay up. Fun fact for all you non-Australians, Ned Kelly is a famed outlaw who robbed banks and killed police officers. Here he fulfills a comparable role to a cop in this story. The irony is not lost on the character. There's a good reason I've thrown all these names down. Whilst much of the driving plot elements rely on Maddie and Kishan is simply our viewpoint character to immerse us in the Terminal, neither of them can really be considered to be the lead protagonist. Even Shay is worth considering, and if you really want to be thematic, death itself. Whatever the case, the story is told in a very linear but also creative fashion. With everything rendered in 3D, scenes are displayed cinematically, each line of text positioned alongside a read scene, allowing for incredibly dynamic scenes. There are some majestic shots and emotionally charged pieces that simply would not excel in the way they do in any other mode of presentation. The dialogue isn't voiced, but the sound design is the perfect blend of coffee shop ambience and lo-fi beats that keep you hooked in, and if you're anything like me, you'll be half tempted to be reading those lines aloud. There's no narration, but you won't miss it. You'll always know exactly who's speaking at all times. In fact, the lack of narration can also benefit. It keeps that level of vagueness between you and the cast. Not knowing how everyone is thinking, or exactly how they're feeling, allows you to relate to everyone who is also just as unaware as you. Thanks to this, as well as the fact that the story is about dealing with death, it can be quite confronting. These characters are fantastic, and there are absolutely no holds barred with the topic because it's delivered in a very friend-to-friend way. There are rather mimetic words and phrases slung into the script, but I don't think they'll date it. The tips don't explain these words in favor of making gags and jokes that are really well written. The humor does help give some very well-wanted brevity to the subject matter, which is handled with the utmost care, feeling oppressive and upsetting over dark or edgy. Between chapters, you can roam the Terminal where the story plays out. The original used a word pool mechanic to allow you to access certain short stories. This has been scrapped. On the Switch, you can press a button to highlight these stories on the map, and then you can run over to them and read them. You can also doodle on Ashley's bots or make your own sequences using the built-in scene editor. As you progress, more areas open up with new text-based side stories to read. They're surprisingly gripping despite being things like emails, goofy robot design notes, or 2 people playing pool. There are also 2 new extra chapters. These chapters are relatively short, but star some other cast members who venture into the cafe and wow! I completely lost track of time reading through them. They're just that good. You unlock both midways into the main story, but I'm unsure where the best point to read them is. I think they're just a bit large to read in the middle since the game isn't very long. Maybe read them afterwards and then replay the entire game. Necrobarista Final Pour is a compelling, and I don't use this lightly, thought-provoking tale about dealing with what comes after, told in a unique way with a cast of incredibly relatable characters. It's like hanging out with a group of friends at a coffee shop, and considering the state of things as this review is being written, you might need that. This is a joke aimed at the fact that Australia is half in lockdown. You can't go for a copy with friends. If you're Australian, you need to get this game. I'm just saying. Noisy Pixel is giving Necrobarista Final Pour a 9 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching. Noisy Pixels are dedicated to bring you guys the best new review previews and more. Please stick around and ring the little bell to stay up to date on all of our future content.
Noisy Pixel.